welcome and thank you for joining us today. You might be noticing that I'm not traditionally the host, and today honored to be able to flip this script, but welcome to Lessons in Leadership with Southern Innkeepers Association. Today, we have the great privilege to be able to interview our host of this series, who's done a wonderful job, and she herself has an incredible story that needs to be told. And so we have pressured her into sitting on the other side of the fence. And so without further ado, it gives me great privilege to introduce Elizabeth Mullins, who is the Vice President of Disney Hotels and Resorts and Premium Services, as well as, if that wasn't enough, as President-elect of the Southern Innkeepers Association. Elizabeth, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I have to tell you, it's a little daunting to be on the other side of this. So, but I'm excited. Oh, great! You're wrapping your hands together like that. So I see some, villainous behavior already exhibited.
The listeners don't know that right before we pushed record, I said, "Can we go off script?" And you said, "Go for it." So
I did.
We will see where this takes us, but we're very honored to have you. You obviously have an incredible story. You're an icon in the industry. You built yourself up within two different organizations that I know of specifically, and more beyond that. And I think it's time to really dig into you. So maybe tell us about, we'll start off with what you're currently doing, and maybe a little about Disney Resorts and Premium Services. What is it? What is it that you do? And what should we know about it?
So I'm the Vice President of Hotels and Resorts and Premium Services. And for this case, I have the role of thinking about what is tomorrow. And so later on, we'll talk about my past and my history, but I'm an operator by trade. And when I joined Disney, it was actually to be an above property leader of hotels and resorts and actually think about what the future should be and how do we grow and how do we evolve and how do we think about tomorrow effectively today. So I lead the development teams and essentially the corporate office, or what we call the subject matter expert team of Disney, which writes our policies and procedures and our standards and things like that. So from the hotel side, that's what I do. I also oversee a business called Premium Services, and that's kind of the luxury end, highly personalized end of Disney. And so there's three parts to that business. One of them is our Golden Oak community, which is a beautiful home site that is 300 gorgeous homes that are located on Walt Disney World property. The second is a secret club called Club 33 that was developed by Walt Disney himself in California about 65 years ago. And we opened the club in Walt Disney World 5 years ago. That's all I can say about that. And then the third one.
When do we get our memberships to Club 33?
And then the third one is our VIP tour product. And so if you're ever in our parks and you see people in plaid, there's a good chance that they're VIP tour guides. And they give you the highest access and behind the scenes personalized adventure and curate an experience around you and your family. So it's a great opportunity to actually do something a little bit different and outside the traditional hotel realm.
That's incredible. Are you allowed to tell us where Club 33 name came from, or is that also a secret?
It's a secret. I will tell you that the first Club 33 is located at 33 Royal Street. There's a lot more history beyond that, but I'm going to stop there. So that is exclusive to our members.
I didn't know if the 3 and the ears had something to do with each other, or maybe I'm overthinking it.
You're fascinating Disney file, aren't you, Casey? That's really interesting. The one other thing that I'd like to mention about our hotel portfolio is we're big. And so at Walt Disney World alone, we have 30,000 rooms. And so that's roughly about the same size as the city of San Francisco.
Wow. And
we have rooms at every price point because we believe that every family deserves a Disney vacation. And so we have the Grand Floridian at the highest end, and we have the All-Star that actually is affordable to families of all ages. And so literally, our portfolio is designed to tell stories. So I have an experience in the park, and then I get to live out my story at one of our resorts throughout my stay.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you obviously didn't start off in this role, and you have a story that took you to the seat that you have now. Could you tell us a little about how you got there?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm gonna go way back in time, and the way back in time is when I was 5. And when I was 5, my father dressed me up in celebration for the holidays and said, "We're going to go to Boston." I grew up in New Hampshire. "We're going to go to Boston and we're going to have afternoon tea. And then we're going to go and we're going to see the Nutcracker Ballet." And I remember everything about the tea experience and nothing about the Nutcracker Ballet. But I remember hand in hand with my dad walking into the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, and the doorman, I still remember his name. His name was Norman. He opened the door for my dad and he knew his name. And then I walked into the lobby, and the Christmas tree, back then there was real Christmas trees in lobbies. And so you smelt that cinnamon and pine. And we walked into the tea room and I heard the music of a harp and I tried a scone. And I looked at my dad and said, "Daddy, this is what I want to do." And he said, "I think you mean this is the way you want to feel all the time." Now, we spend a lot of time at Disney trying to make people feel like a prince or a princess, but I felt like that at the Ritz-Carlton. And I was also a very stubborn and determined little 5-year-old. So I looked at my dad and said, "No, this is really what I want to do." I went to hotel school. My dad said, "If I'm going to help with college, you're going to get a business degree and a hotel degree." So that is what I did. And 6 days after I graduated, I started at that very same hotel, the Ritz-Carlton Boston, as a management trainee. The Ritz-Carlton was a little company at the time. And so we had only 6, or I still say we, because I was with them for 28 years, but had 6 hotels. And so I was able to grow and literally had almost every position within a hotel, both on the food and beverage side and on the room side, and grew and became a general manager. I was a general manager for them 9 times in 9 different locations. And then for the last decade, 12 years before I joined Disney, I was both a general manager and an area vice president. So I oversaw kind of that East Coast Mid-Atlantic region for the Ritz-Carlton. And then I had the opportunity to join Disney in this fascinating role. And I'm not sure I would have taken many other positions. A position should have to speak to you. And this Disney position spoke to me because it was so different. And so literally took the leap and joined the Disney team. That was 6 years ago. And I have to tell you, I've learned so much in 6 years. I'm very different than I was coming into it with a pure operational hat, with now thinking more strategically than I was then. But it has been the ride of a lifetime in a career that I'm very proud of, in a profession that I wouldn't, if I had to do it all over again, I'd pick the same profession.
I just read A Ride of a Lifetime by
You
Bob
did.
Iger. I did. And now he's back. And
He's back.
It was a lovely book. Curious, we have ups and we have downs, and there's things that we look back at real fondly and are proud of. And there's things that are just irritating and frustrating. And, we might even regret sometimes. As you think back on your career, maybe start with what are things that you, look back at as a frustration that helped you grow, or something that really was a character builder. Maybe not in the moment, wasn't the best thing in the world, but in hindsight, it really helped make Elizabeth who she is today.
I would say the majority of my 30 plus years in the hotel industry is peppered by really good things. And so you have to realize that the good outweighs the bad in such a great way. So I look at the good stuff as taking down the properties for the pandemic. Hotels are not supposed to close. We open and we stay open for 50 plus years.
Right.
That's the nature of who we are. And so actually to close them is counterintuitive to us, or to give one away is counterintuitive to us. But to actually be able to reopen these properties one by one across a year and a half was remarkably rewarding. And during that time, we had the opportunity to bring back professional sports to America in the form of the NBA bubble. So literally very early in the pandemic, to be able to create that environment that the NBA felt safe and could play in for the 110 days they were with us was one of the most challenging and rewarding times of my entire career. There's also times where your hotel receives 5 stars. and you know that you're the best of the best and the top 2% of the world, and that moment and that pride that you feel for your team stays with you. And then just this week, I was able to look at the scores for my VIP tour business, and they are the #1 scores for all of Walt Disney World. And that team is just crushing it with excellence and personalization. And so you have those moments that you think, wow, we are doing it and doing it well. And that can happen often. And so literally, that's why I think we're in the most beautiful industry on the planet, because although we have these moments that challenge and test that sort of life, and on the flip side, we have the greatest ups and moments of joy of anyone.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. But you've had in your career, you went through and you talked about how, 5 years old, you got this wonderful experience that kind of stuck with you, and you've been recreating it ever since. And, but there definitely are a lot fewer women in key leadership roles like yours than there should be perhaps in the industry. And I'm just curious, from your vantage point, there's a young up and coming lady working and kind of growing. What advice might you give to her as she's beginning to form her career?
I still look at this all the time, and I will tell you, as I was forming my career, I was first and only in many ways. And so I was for years the only female around the table for years. Because I grew up in that environment, meaning growing up in the industry in that environment, it didn't seem odd to me. It does now, which proves we've actually come a long way, right? Like there should never be the sole female at the table. That said, Casey, we can still do better. So you introduced me as the incoming president of SIA, and I pulled the president's list back from 115 years, and I'm the first female.
Get out of town.
And so literally I'm like, yes, it is time, right? It is time. And we need to lean into those moments of when it's time. But I also challenge everybody on the call to say, hey, look out for diversity, champion it in your organization. And whether it is someone of color or someone of a different gender, reach out and pull them up. Challenge them to take other opportunities and positions, and know that the balance in this world is better because we have diversity of thought. And so truthfully, I look back and it's hard for me to recognize any challenges I went through because I didn't know better. But now I do. Now I know there's potential for all of us around the table, and we're better when we truly have that diversity of thought.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think just spinning off of that, one of the things you've done a really good job at in your interviews is talking about, this multidimensional leadership aspect. There are all these different hats that you wear every day. It might be from a leadership perspective, which is, strategic and alignment related, and management, which is, the idea of getting things from point A to point B and doing it in a measured way that has an eye towards perhaps financial results or other data points. The technical aspect, which for us, has so many different elements, whether it's the creative, innovative side to it, or actually how things happen in logistics and details. And then obviously on the relationship side, which, you've talked about a lot and has certainly been a major part of your career, but maybe lean into those a little bit and tell us more about, from your view, ways that you've seen those manifested either in teams or in people that you've looked up to or in yourself over the years, and little tidbits that we might take away.
So I think as we look at these 4 attributes, leadership, management, technical, and relationship, for me, this is making sure that we are balanced in our approach with what and how we lead. And that's great. And so as I have my one-on-ones with my leaders at every level, we always talk about these 4 things. It's part of our DNA. We actually said, just right before this, I had one of my one-on-ones and spoke about each one of these: leadership, management, technical, and relationships, and said, how do you bring them to life and what do you want to get better at? So I'll talk about what each one means to me. So the first one is leadership, and leadership and management are two really different things. So from leadership, this is about inspiration. This is about how do you inspire others to follow? How do you inspire others to reach? How do you inspire others to create excellence every day? It's about strategy, how to set the course for your future, not just getting through the day, but actually thinking about next year, the next 5, and beyond that. And then it's also about your vision. What is your vision for your team, for your department, for you to become whatever is next for you in this journey? And finally, there's drive. How do you as a leader continue to drive forward, open new doors, and pull people along with you? And especially coming out of the pandemic, I'll add another one, and that's empathy. You know, the world went through crisis as we went through the pandemic, and not everybody understands that the world went through crisis. And so today's leader, it's important to lead with empathy first, I think. And so that has become this incredible attribute of what leadership means. If I move to the next one, which is management, this is about cultivating the craft that is hospitality. So truly, we are craftsmen. And our skill is running this highly personalized, amazing business better than anybody else can. And so that's really beautiful. And it's comprised of your decision-making skills. Are you decisive? But are you using the right data points to make valuable decisions along the way? How's your financial acumen? And we are typically not a nonprofit. We actually are for-profit businesses. And so how is your financial acumen? And how are you using your data points, like the voice of the consumer, the voice of the cat, to make those decisions that are celebrated and loved and balanced, that impact both of them in an equal way? And then you have your technical expertise. And your technical expertise is knowing the industry better than anybody else. Not just your department, not just your hotel, but the industry at large. So do you know your market as well as your competitors know the market? Do you know the industry at large? Do you think about what's happening today and tomorrow? Are you technically equipped to make large scale decisions beyond the day-to-day, but actually large scale decisions that will impact your hotel or your company for many years to come? And then what do trends look like? What is the trends of today, and how do you incorporate that into your learning for trends of tomorrow? And then really it is being courageous, being brave, and having curiosity to want to learn and develop throughout your career. I've never gotten to a point where I think I've reached mastery. I'm still a student, and I'm still learning every single day of how to create and do better in this business. I'll end with the one that I think is most important, and that's relationships. And in this industry, relationships is everything, whether it's relationships with your cast, or it's that's what we call our employees, our cast base, whether it's relationship with your cast and employees, or your relationship with your customers, relationship with your competitors, relationship with those on boards like Southern Innkeepers that actually can fulfill and inspire you in different ways. And so looking at the relationships that you have and build over the course of a lifetime are so incredibly impactful. And I lean on those relationships that I made from when I started as a management trainee. I still know most of those trainees. They're still in the business, all scattered around different companies, but I still call them as a phone a friend to this day. Because relationships matter. And it's really, it's about how you cultivate those relationships, lean on those relationships, and are thankful for those relationships that really make you better. So I look at our leaders of tomorrow, which is everybody watching this call, and saying, hey, all of these attributes are things you can look at internally and with your teams and say, how do you get better at each one to be a more rounded leader in the hospitality space?
Is there something interesting that very few people might not know about you that you would be willing to share? that is beyond, there's a lot of interesting things I should say, but maybe something that's a lesser known fact while we have the tables turned.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. And I would tell you that, as I mentioned, the hospitality industry is my passion, and so is travel. And I travel to learn, to grow, to be exposed to different cultures, to understand all of that. And I love adventure travel, meaning I love really exploring off the beaten path locations. And so a couple of these examples was, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro from the base to the top. Yes, it was an incredible journey. I trained for it, I climbed it, and then I explored Africa largely by myself because I just really wanted to have this adventure. Or my husband and my daughter and I both explored India and Bhutan. So we went to the five kingdoms of Bhutan, climbed about a bunch of mountains. We actually learned about the Buddhist heritage and did some meditation with some monks. It was an incredible learning experience that I came back from both of those changed in a way that actually made me better.
Wow, that's incredible. And then before we move on to our last question, what in your world, how do you have a lot of family obligations, you've got a lot of community obligations, and obviously you're very busy at work, and now you are the first incoming president-elect that this organization has ever had, at least in 115 years. How do you stay balanced and centered? How do you refuel? What are tips that avoid burnout that perhaps we could learn from?
I'm asked that a lot. I'm always asked about work-life balance. And I actually like to take that question off the table because I'm not sure that it's truly work-life balance. I think it's just balance.
Exactly.
Right. And so really, I think you as an individual and I as an individual will have different elements of balance and what balance is right for us at different points of our life. And so when I had a young daughter, she's married and has a daughter of her own now. But when I had a young daughter, my balance was different than I do today, right? So literally, I work not just for an income, that's important too, but I work because I love it. I work for joy. And so that part of my balance may seem larger in the balance scheme of things than for others, but if it gives me joy, it's okay. And so I would look as the way I recharge is I'm an extrovert by nature, but I actually do need some down and alone time, whether it's to read or to hike or, just to think or to explore and find a new destination, which could be just in my own backyard. I actually try to take a little alone time every single week to actually recharge and think. And I mentioned hiking a lot because it does give me that time to process and think. It's not always work related. Sometimes it's how to be a better person or what am I thinking about for me or for my family or, for what's next in my life. But I would just say balance is important, but it's holistic balance that everybody needs to really think about and make sure you're making the right choices because you as an adult get to make all sorts of choices in what you do and how to approach your career and your personal life and everything else to create balance. I'm going to give you a small example. So for me, for my entire career, I've always tried to live within 25 minutes of my job because I know I spend a lot of time there. And so therefore, I want to cut down on commute time so that I'll use that time to be with my family. But that's a choice I make. Maybe I could have lived in a bigger house further out, but that was my choice to achieve balance. And that's a small thing, but Casey, I don't think there's one big thing that helps you achieve balance. I think it's the 45 small decisions that you collectively make with purpose that allows you to achieve balance in your life.
Amen. Totally agree. Well said. So to conclude, what I'm going to ask. This is something that we are fortunate to have the wisdom of all of these different leaders that make up our organization and many. And we now have this wonderful medium to be able to pass on these lessons that we've learned and gained over the years. And I love this aspect of the podcast, or because it's something I think we all learn from and all the people that you've interviewed so far. And so we're all anxiously awaiting to get your 5 lessons in leadership.
All right. Okay, mine are pretty simple, but I think they're worth thinking about. And the first one is to have gratitude and be grateful. I think sometimes our days are crowded and chaotic and busy. And as hoteliers, we often have 100 balls in the air at the same time. But truthfully, we honestly lead and create things that are so important to this world. And those things that we create are memories. That's what we create. And to be able to say that I am a memory maker, that's something that I'm eternally grateful for. So truthfully, I would start with number one is be grateful. Number two is be a light and not a judge, be a model and not a critic, be there to inspire and to support, but always lead the way and have courage. And so my lesson in leadership is quite simply be brave, but lead with empathy. And if you do those two things, you will achieve remarkable things that you actually didn't realize that you are capable of doing. Because pushing our boundaries is something that many of us fall short of. But actually, if you use those words to persevere, you can have an extraordinary career. The next one is be purposeful, and be purposeful, especially in two things. Be purposeful in building your personal brand, and be purposeful in the steps you take to develop your career. Because each step and position you take and each aspect of your personal brand actually is magnified over time. And so really your reputation is built over the small steps that you take today. That's what will manifest you into the larger jobs, the larger opportunities, the larger sense of being that you'll have tomorrow. But I think for so long, especially if you're younger in your career and just starting out, you're not realizing that these decisions magnify or matter. But I challenge you that they do. I mean, for one, I've actually never taken a job for money. I've taken a job for opportunity, and I've taken a job because I like the job. And that means that I've actually never worked in my life. I've played and I've had responsibility and I've had fun and I've developed a career that I passionately love. The next one is give back. Think about giving back. And we can give back in a lot of ways. You can give back by being involved in your community. You can give back by being involved with your team. You can give back through mentorship. You can give back to what I said before by reaching out to one of those diverse candidates that maybe isn't getting a shot, but you're the person that's going to lift them up. And give back because you're giving back because you want our industry to succeed. So we all know that we are in a labor crunch as an industry. So how are you actually trying to solve that in a grassroots effort? How are you actually giving back to our industry every day? And finally, I would say, be a lifelong learner. We're never masters in our craft. We're always here to learn, to develop, to grow, to achieve new things, and to break every barrier that we possibly can. And so I actually look to those people on the call that, quite frankly, will have your job, Casey, and mine in the future, and say, be lifelong learners so you're ready, because we're counting on you to take us, right, to take us to the next 5 decades and beyond.
Powerful. Elizabeth, thank you so much. This has been a delight getting to know you and to hear your story. You have so much to offer and your career is inspirational. And we can't wait to see what you continue to do. And so thanks for taking time. And we look forward to the next leadership lessons in leadership as Elizabeth returns to the white screen and continues to talk to the best in the Southeast. Elizabeth, thanks very much.
Thank you, Casey, and thank you for being kind, my friends. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.